Welcome to The Chat. Come behind the inbound scenes of some of the world's fastest growing companies. For the past 10 years as Chatmetrics, we've had an exclusive inside view of how these industry leaders are revolutionising inbound marketing and sales across diverse sectors. Each week, we bring you conversations with top minds in marketing and sales who share insider secrets and strategies for driving inbound success. Join us on The Chat, your front row seat to the future of inbound. Today on The Chat, we're joined by Mitch Bruger, serial founder, marketer and creator of the MAVEN method. From scaling service brands to building mindset frameworks, Mitch knows how to grow businesses that actually work. Mitch,
thanks
welcome
very much,
to The
Terry.
Chat.
How are you travelling this morning?
Very well, thanks. Very well. And all the better for you, I'm sure, shortly. Well, let's jump straight into it. What's one idea or approach that if more sales and marketing leaders used would totally transform their pipeline or team performance? What's your big stance on that?
Big question, broad question. I think probably the key element, particularly in today's market, is to have the humility and the overview to be able to step back and have a look at exactly what's happening around you in the marketplace, what your customers are looking for, what your team is able to provide, how you exist as a company. I think if you can step back from the ways we've always done it, everybody's out there chasing the Google ads and the ranking and the SEO and all the other stuff that marketers spruik as the golden egg. That's where it all comes from. The methodologies by which you get in touch with people, or indeed have people get in touch with you, which is in my mind always a better way. And if you look at those things, if you look at the way you do the outreach, if you want to call it that, the old door knocking, all of the stuff that used to work years and years ago, that stuff still works, but we've gotten a little bit too clever for ourselves. We've pushed past that and we're all trying to chase this digital nirvana of being able to market to people and get to people. And it really comes back to people, being human, being a good person and building relationships with people. That's, in my mind, that's where business should start and really be originated from.
I agree. And I think what I heard you saying there, a large component of was engage with the customers the way they want to be engaged with.
Yeah.
Not the way that you're necessarily thinking is the panacea in terms of the new digital landscape.
That's true. And it may not even be you thinking that. It may be the marketing agency that you've engaged, or it may be the marketing guy who you've hired directly out of university, and he's got all the latest bully on, what to do with digital and how to get out there. And it may not align as it should with your company. It probably will, because he's done his homework and everything, or she. But the methodologies by which you grew your business to where it is at the moment, so expanding upon that and keeping the good customer service and reliability and integrity and showing up when you say you're going to show up, there's really only a few small items that you can do. If you do them properly, you suddenly stand out way above the rest of your marketplace. And that's something we've lived at Advanced for many years. If you treat people how they want to be treated and you actually do what you say you're going to do, you set an appointment and you turn up. I mean, how many times have you called a tradie or, gone on an ad or found a bunch of people to do a job? For example, you've got a plumbing problem. You reach out of the 6 or 8 or 10, get back to you was a quote, and then you don't hear anything from them. And so the one guy that actually picks up the phone, you have a conversation with him, he comes out, has a conversation with you because he's being integral. He's doing what he's saying he's going to do. It sounds very simple, but it's really what the customers are looking for, what they want.
It is. Absolutely it is. And quite frankly, that's the underlying foundation that our business is built on. In essence, I mean, it's funny you mentioned plumbers in terms of getting into contact. The first thing usually is a Google search to get the number. You either get it direct from Google or from the website. We've seen across plumbers specifically, we've got plumbers and electricians and other trades as clients. We watch their marketing return on investment multiply dramatically when they've got something like live chat on their website, for instance, because there's people there actually talking and resolving the problem straight away. They're able to, even if they can't resolve the problem, you can lock in a time to talk. You can let them know that their concerns have been heard and that there's an appointment, somebody's scheduled to come and see them, or there's a call scheduled where somebody's going to get back to them. So that means that concern is resolved now. They don't have to keep going on and ringing another 6 plumbers. And we've seen particularly where there's been a competitive suburb, for instance, and, there might be half a dozen plumbers in there. We've seen being able to shift considerable amount of market share or demand from those industries over to plumbers simply by having live chat on there and be able to respond straight away on their website. And like I'm talking, plumbers that were traditionally getting 2 or 3 leads a month through their website, that's jumped dramatically to 10, 15 or 20 leads a month through their website, or inquiries coming through their website. So it's a big area, high demand and high competitiveness means that you've got to be on your game. None of us operate in a silo. And like you said, if you're on your commitments and be there when the customer needs you, then that's what's going to deliver,
Absolutely.
deliver
And I
the
think what
results.
you touched on before,
Which
what you
you've
mentioned
been
on there being a person there to speak to, the difference between having chatbot, which is a digital robot that you're speaking to, people are pretty savvy and they pick up on whether they're talking to a real person or not fairly quickly. I know I do. And sometimes if I've got a simple FAQ or a simple something that I want to ask that I want to know about, I'm okay with it being a bot. But if I've got particularly, let's go back to the plumbing analogy, if I've got a plumbing problem, there's something I want to speak to somebody about who can understand what I'm saying. And even if they can't assist me with that, take the lead and forward it to someone who will get dynamite.
Yeah, correct. And in a time that's promised, I think that's the other point, is that we found that, again, using the plumber example, that it's not just taking the lead and passing it through, it's letting the person know that's got the problem when they'll be contacted. And so we'll actually book a time for that phone call or that appointment for a site visit to take place. We found that if you leave it to the whim of the plumbers or their admin staff or however they normally handle their inbound leads, there's not the pressure for fast response. As much as they like to think there is, they'll get a text message before breakfast and think, oh yeah, I'll get to that later. And then get distracted. The reality is, by able to book in a time, they've got the commitment, they've made a commitment themselves via us that they have to respond at that particular time. And it's a cool psychological trigger that goes into the customer's mind that, oh, good, stage one of the problem solved. I found the right person to talk to, and I know when I'll be talking to them.
And lo and behold, they turned up.
That's the way it's
fantastic.
So
and these guys are fantastic.
They do.
When just
Yeah. And and you've experienced it yourself, when you're getting back to leads, inbound leads quickly, the faster response always closes more deals than the slower response. I mean, there's statistics, there's one thing about statistics, and that is that, 98% of them are all false, but there's been research and studies that have been done by a number of organisations now that show that more than half of winnable deals will go to the provider that responds first. And
that
response starts, it's huge, and it's money for jam, quite frankly. If you're in a competitive market and you're all spending money on the marketing to get leads into the front door, that's huge, that ability to respond first. And I mean, I feel like I'm hijacking this here, but we had a person on the podcast, Elza Mollick, quite a few months ago. And I always assumed that the reason the first responder wins most of the deals is because they're the ones that they start to forge the relationship. They get to, if it's a request for proposal or an RFP, then they get to help frame that and they help guide the buying journey. But it's actually much deeper psychological reasons than that. And I found out that the CIA actually train their people on this very aspect. And that is that when you are the first to respond to a situation, a request for contact, or the first to respond in terms of, we'll just use our language, a lead coming in, when you have that first conversation, every other conversation after that they have, or whether competitors or whoever, psychologically is social proof of your conversation. So you're the one that's shared knowledge, you've shared some insights, you've set the frame in terms of what things look like. When they speak to a competitor, if that competitor says the same thing you did, they're not pulling them towards the competitor. Psychologically, what's happening is that competitor is reinforcing what you've said. And oh, that's right. Terry said that. And it was fascinating for me. She's behavioural science, highly qualified and has a lot of experience in it. And in fact, that's what a business is now, helping large organisations change their behaviour in a whole host of areas across their organisation and customer base. And it was fascinating to hear that was the way or the reason behind why that first contact actually does deliver those outcomes. So it was fascinating for me.
This is what we're talking about. This is, people want to know this stuff. I read a book some time ago and met a fascinating gentleman called Marcus Sheridan, and he's written a book called They Ask You Answer. And it's the simplicity of giving your customer what it is they want to know. And it sounds really simple, But a lot of people in business tend to be a little bit guarded about things. Now, they don't want their competitors finding out their price. They don't want industry knowledge to get out there that's theirs. But the thing is that the customer who's out there asking the question, they just want a straight answer to it. I want to buy X, Y, Z. How much are they? Well, it depends on your circumstance, and we have to do a proposal. And yeah, but roughly how much are they? Well, it depends on it. Just give me a damn price. I'm after. Are they $2,000? Are they $6,000? Tell me. And that frustration, I think, it turns more people off than what the possibility of losing a job here or there because you've been overly honest with people. Honesty builds trust. It just does.
The frustration, it's very interesting from a psychological perspective. You use the word frustration, and that is what we feel. But there is a deeper message that it sends, and that is that if they won't tell me the price, it must be very, very expensive. And straight away, when someone is guarded with their pricing, the brain automatically goes to that point, well, this must be super expensive. I probably can't afford it, or, that level of assumption is that, well, the assumption is in the mind that it is a very expensive, a high-priced offer.
And the other thing is that the business owner themselves or the salesperson doing that, if they are guarded with it, or if they do give the price straight away, they have a fear within them that if I tell you how much it is, I'm going to lose the sale. Well, if you tell them how much it is and it's more than they were expecting or it's too much, then you as a salesperson need to go to the effort of explaining why it's at that price point, because there's obviously a reason for it being at that price point. Market competition and that you haven't just picked a figure out of the sky. It is that price point for a reason based on quality and service and everything else. But if I tell you that price point and you think it's too much and I lose the sale, well, then it's probably something you wanted in the first. If they can't afford to buy it, then you're actually cleaning out your sales funnel.
One of two things: you're cleaning out your sales funnel, or you're failing in delivering the appropriate value to the client so that they understand the value. As you said at the beginning, it's not, you haven't just plucked a number. It's built up on specific aspects, and, being able to communicate that value to clients it's not easy. It's actually a difficult thing to do. And personally, I believe it's one of the reasons why most businesses fail in that. I do one of the services that I offer is inbound funnel reviews. So I will review everything from initial contact all the way through to getting to the point where they would put me into their pipeline as a potential deal. And I did one recently, and it was shocking to me. When I do them, I do their own, and I do one of their major competitors. And the salesperson or the sales leader had been complaining to the CEO that their pricing's too high. They're being priced out of the market. That's why the competitor's beating them. Long story short, it wasn't that at all. It was an exceptionally poor experience coming through their funnel, and an exceptionally good and easy and confident experience going through their competitor's funnel. And it was like they had a big brick wall up, an invisible brick wall, but it took me so much effort to try and get contact and get in touch just to even have a conversation, let alone the poor quality of the conversation versus their competitor. That was the simple barrier. That's quite shocking and hard to hear for some people because they spend so much time setting up all of their infrastructure, their tech and their forms and, the special follow-up emails and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
People, like you said,
and
in
each
the
and every one of those steps is a further bottleneck, a barrier to actually making the sale, to giving the customer what they want.
Absolutely.
I remember years ago with my wife and I went for a road trip out to Stanthorpe, and Stanthorpe's an apple growing region. And we went into this farmhouse store and we bought a piece of apple pie, a little dob of ice cream on the side of it and a cup of tea, and it was a beautiful drive in the country. And the apple pie was just next level. It had the cinnamon sultanas and it was just mouth-watering beautiful. So we thought, we'll go and grab a pie and take it home. And we walked up to the counter and said, could we grab one of those pies? No, we can't sell a whole pie. Oh, but they're great pies. Well, can we just have like half a pie then, or like two halves of a pie? Or, no, we can't. We can only sell it by the piece. I don't mind paying for each piece. If it's 12 pieces, will you add up what it is and tell me how much it is? I just want a whole pie. Take home for my family. No, I'm sorry, we can't do that, sir.
My goodness. Yeah.
Thanks. Have a great day. It just baffles me. How can you stare a customer in the face and say, no, sir, I'm sorry, you can't have that. Put your money back in your pocket. No, we can't do that. Spun me out.
Yeah. It shows, I believe, so I'm sure that individual may have well been an employee based on the interaction you gave me and not necessarily an owner. Can you imagine what the owner would think standing behind that person? This individual is following the rules that have been set. We don't want to discount and sell full pies, but if somebody's asking to pay the price of the number of slices in the pie, it's like, that was just, I'm sure that owner would have been devastated, and I just wonder how much money they're losing
Yeah,
on
but
that.
ultimately that person that's doing that job was trained by that owner or one of their managers as to how to do the job. And that's, we do this and we don't do that. So ultimately it falls back on
And
them.
there's a gap from the owner not walking the floor, and
Yeah,
there's
you've
not
got to be in
walking the
touch in your
floor.
business.
I mean,
And I do
that's,
that today, temporary fencing business and our environmental services business. I spend time out in the field. I'll be in an excavator one day. I'll be driving a truck. I'll be out doing a football event I went up to the Pink concert a little while back with the boys on the water barriers trucks and just spend the entire shift with them and drive trucks and get in there and do it and chat and get to feel what's happening on the coalface of the market front. As a business owner, doing that and getting that close to your business, not often, but just every now and again, firstly, you become a lot closer to your staff and your teams because you're essentially one of them. I'm just a truck driver in a high-vis shirt, and some of the casuals, some of the guys that don't often work with us didn't actually know that I was the business owner. I was just one of the workers with them that day. And the conversations that you have and the conversations that you have with your customers, customer in this case was Brisbane City Council and Queensland Police interaction and things like that. Just as a worker on your coalface, you get to learn so much about your business and about your customers. It's invaluable. I recommend everyone should do it at least once, preferably more often.
I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, there's a couple of shows that are built on that type of concept, Undercover Boss and Secret CEO, that type of thing. You know, through my career, it's probably one of the biggest learnings, and a way that I've ran and operated right from the very beginning is walk the floor. You know, begin there, you into the coalface and just experience what your team's experiencing, interact with the customers at their place. The number of calls that I've gone, we were actually out in the customer's environment as opposed in your environment. Everything changes. The conversations, the insights, the relationships, that is culture building stuff. And look, and on that note, Mitch, you know, you've been a bit of a serial entrepreneur from a very young age, I recall from our last conversation. What were the early businesses you built, and what lessons from those still guide you today?
Wow. Early businesses go right back to when I was a kid, fixing motorbikes, buying motorbikes and fixing them up and selling them again over in New Zealand. I think the business 101, the entrepreneurship 101 thing, which is, I'm actually in the process of writing a book on E101, is something that everybody should learn, and you should learn it from as younger age as you can. The business principles, like what we were talking about before, the simplicity of customer service, of giving people what they're looking for, of providing service, of providing integrity, and being a stand-up guy in business, those values and those principles have been applied through all the businesses that I've had over the years and still have. So at the moment, that with the Advanced Group being my core business, has advanced temporary fencing, advanced environmental services, advanced landscaping, advanced cleaning, which is a commercial cleaning company, and advanced trolleys, which is a shopping trolley collection business. All of those businesses, they all function under the same guise. And the byline for the company is taking care means a lot. And that sounds almost simple enough to be just a trite throwaway line, but it's actually the guiding principle by which we run the businesses, is that little bit of extra care and making sure that things are right when you're doing them. In a commercial cleaning example, for saying that the cleaners will be there and there will be a team of 4 and this is the outline of what they're going to do, and they go there and they turn up at the right time and they do exactly what they're supposed to do. So that's all customers are really looking for. So the integrity is a big part of it. Secondly, being customer centric, being customer focused, which is what I was saying before, asking, they ask, you answer. Being genuine and real with your customers affords them a level of trust and a level of comfort in knowing that they're spending their money with the right provider. The temporary fencing game in particular is very much a roundabout. There's a pool, it's a commodity product. You can get it from a number of different suppliers, and sometimes you will lose a customer for the simple reason that the schedule's overbooked. They've got an emergency job that has to go in this afternoon. You just physically cannot do that. And they'll just get on the phone and find another temporary fencing supplier, and that other temporary fencing supplier will then service the absolute bejesus out of them on the very first job, probably even the second or third job, until they just become one of the regular customers, until the next time that they're overbooked, or for whatever reason the truck breaks down or they can't get there and the guy needs the fence, so he calls somebody else. And because it's roughly the same meter rate everywhere, everyone's pretty much on the same sort of meter rate. It's like petrol, a coal service station or to a Shell or a BP. It's just petrol for the car. You don't really care. Might be a few cents difference here and there. Sometimes people go chasing the litre rate and drive further at the expense to use more petrol than they do for the savings they would have got. But people do that. So, having the integrity and looking after your customers, those two core guiding principles are what I live by. And that's as I said, that's gone throughout the
The-
businesses. I've moved forward then SiteSmART Australia, which is probably one of Australia's premier banner and signage suppliers, which I founded off the back of the temporary fencing company to essentially sell the advertising space on the temporary fences. So if you're having a temporary fence on site, you're going to want to be able to sell the development or whatever it is from that very site, particularly if it's on a busy road. You've got 100,000 cars a
Mhm.
day passing the site. Why wouldn't you have some branding material, some advertising on the outside of the fence? It's essentially a free billboard. It's already on site. You've got it. So SiteSmART Australia was founded off the back of advanced temporary fencing. And then from there, I've then gone deeper and deeper into the psychology of selling and the psychology of customer service and what people are looking for. So for me, it seemed that there was more a divide. The further we got along technology's timeline, the further the divide of genuine service, which is what people used to love and used to retain customers with, seems to be slipping further and further away. So I've tried to capture all that stuff from back then and put that into books, podcasts, like in this case, and indeed speaking about it and sharing with people that the old way is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So on that end, then, how do you define entrepreneurship now?
I see entrepreneurship as the key to the future, particularly for youth. And the reason I say that is that we've fallen into this zone where we send our kids off to school and they learn to memorize things that they'll never use again in their life, only to recount them at the end of the year and get a number on a piece of paper, which tells them what kind of job they can get to work for somebody else. That's industrial age thinking. That was how it was back then. And we've moved much further past that now, even though the education system hasn't kept up. So for me, teaching entrepreneurship and sharing it, particularly with young kids. I've got a series of children's books on entrepreneurship, which is basic stories. Lulu Loves Lemonade, Trevor the Tutor. Yes, there's the principles, the core principles written for a child to understand so they get their head around the job isn't necessarily what you need to be chasing here. Now, if you're already in the pipeline, you've gone through the standard education system, you're coming out into the workforce, yes, you're going to need a job. You get yourself a job, get some money, but you start a side hustle on the side and you build that side hustle until you get to a point where you can no longer afford to keep your day job. You have to quit the day job because your business is too profitable. That's my philosophy, and I share that with as many kids as I can. And their parents. Parents play a big part of it. Parents need to be able to step out of the zone of what they were taught as kids and allow their kids to spread forth into entrepreneurship today and assist them in whatever way they can to do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's particularly with the way things are going. I mean, I've had some very interesting conversations about AI over the last month or so. There's a new world coming for us, and I think the gap that AI has, and it seems will have into the future, even if you talk about AGI, the general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, will be the thing that I think is the spark that makes all of us difference. And that's our creativity, our innovation, our ability to think up new ideas. Even at this stage, they're saying that it's not likely that AI will be able to replace that in any time soon, even with a general idea. And that to me is almost like the core of entrepreneurship. You need to have that innovation and creativity and find new ways to solve old problems and new problems. There's always new problems that arise as well. But that is I think what certainly at the moment, what keeps us different to AI. So, and that to me is the core foundation. If you find a problem to solve, then, and you start solving that problem and do it in the business, a commercially viable way, then you're an entrepreneur. So
it's becoming easier, particularly for the youth, to do so because they are what's been termed as digital natives. They've grown up with the internet. They've never known anything else. And the new developments that happen far earlier in the uptake cycle than people of our age are.
When you talk about that in growing up in a certain age, I used to think that, it was amazing that my grandfather had grown up in the age where he'd come through, horse and cart into cars, then to seeing radio and telephones. And unfortunately, he didn't see this particular grandfather didn't see the earlier stages of the internet, but did see mobile phones. And so it was like this whole transition through, you think about how fast things had advanced in that time. And then I think about my life and the technology changes that I've seen in my life. And, I'm pre-internet. So in fact, where I grew up, I actually grew up out in the country. So my first telephone experience was wind the dial on the local exchange. And so then to move on to the proper telephone systems and then onto mobile phones and then the internet, and, faxes moving to emails. And It's just been a fascinating of advancement. I think that I've probably seen a greater speed of advancement in my lifetime than what my grandfather saw in his lifetime, even though they were pretty big jumps. The jumps that we've seen have been, world changing as well. We're going through another one, I think, with regards to AI and entrepreneurship and business. And I think it's those individuals that are doing it themselves will be the ones. But yeah, it's been huge changes. And the ability to change or adapt will be one of the other core
Absolutely,
functions.
And just further on that, does that look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What are we going to be doing? How is life going to be different? It's deep
interesting.
pondering.
Well, I saw a podcast. I guess I've been on this topic around AI a little bit over the last month or so. I saw a podcast of the Diaries of a CEO, or the CEO Diaries, by Stephen Bartlett. And he had the gentleman on that was effectively the grandfather of AI, and finished the whole episode right at the end. And almost as his last question was, well, what would you advise? I should tell my kids what jobs should they get, in terms of where AI is going. And they said, a plumber, be a plumber. It'll be the hardest thing for AI to take away in terms of, or replace in terms of doing the job. And then they make pretty good money. And moving forward, they'll probably make damn good money. And so he was shuffling his papers at the end, and he thought the cameras were off. And there's the last comment he said probably disturbed me more than anything else. And he said, this is a guy that left Google so that he could go and speak openly about his fears and concerns for the future with AI. As he's shuffling his papers and he stands up to leave the discussion, he says, people think I'm joking when I'm talking about a plumber, but I'm dead serious, and they make decent money. It's like that, with the gravity of what he was saying, it wasn't a joke or a throwaway comment. It was a reality. So, I mean, look, the other factors to consider in also, I think, there's two guardrails. Government legislation will supposedly protect us. We'll see about that. I don't know how much trust I have in the government. But the other side is adoption, and just how much adoption there is, in us as far as the human society is concerned. And I saw reports yesterday that the adoption of AI is actually plateauing. So it's been on a very sharp uptick because it's the new bright shiny thing and everyone wants to be involved with it. Certainly the early adopters do, but it's starting to plateau. And the other statistic I saw yesterday is that 94% of enterprise AI projects have failed to date. And so I think that's a sign of this huge adoption wave that's come through, and everybody thinks that that's important. That's what they need to do. But they've not been able to get the results and outcomes that they were expecting at this stage. It's early. I mean, it's still a tool at this stage. So I think they're probably lacking the skill set ourselves to get the most out of it.
Very much so.
I'm going to say, I think in 2 years, what would it look like? Probably not too dissimilar. 5 years, probably start to see things look a little bit different. But, 15 years out from here, I think it's probably going to be a very different scenario than what we're seeing here today.
Look, I think for me, what the golden nugget that I've seen in the middle of AI is bundling it with other things, making it part of yourself and how you express yourself, how you're able to create things. I use AI in the MAVEN methods. It's something that, as you say, it's a tool, and a tool is only as good as the person using that tool. So you need to get to know how to use it correctly for the benefits and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve in order for it to be of value to you, because the capability is there. It's what you do with it.
What do you think it is that's allowed the advanced group and SiteSmART to grow and scale the way that they have?
I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Integrity, customer service, doing what we say we're going to do, delivering on time, and just being there. And if something goes wrong, we step in, we fix it. It really is that simple.
Getting the simple stuff.
Getting it right, yeah.
This might show my age a bit here, but when I was living in Sydney, early in my career, there was a morning radio host called Doug Mulray, and quite a good, a funny comedian, Doug Mulray, Triple M in Sydney. And I'll never forget driving to work one morning. I was personally going through some complexity. I'd changed a career slightly, so I was in a big, steep learning curve. And I'd always had this feeling, of keeping things simple is the best way. It stops complexity, it stops cost, it gets the best outcomes, the quickest amount of time. And I'll never forget, Doug Mulray used to put on this funny Nana's voice, and there was an ad on television at the time for Kellogg's cornflakes. They're just simply kernels of corn rolled out or oven baked or whatever they are, so you can have them at breakfast of a morning. And he put on this funny voice and in his Nana voice and said, use that phrase from the Kellogg's cornflakes ad, And he was demeaning towards a guest that had on that had made some stupid comment. And he said, sometimes the simple things in life are the best. And I don't know what it is or why, but you can see how vividly I remember that. Now, I'm talking age myself here, 1987, when I heard that. And that has just impressed itself into my head so strongly. I think because it aligns so much with my underlying philosophy of keeping things simple. It's brought itself right through to today. If you look at what we do as a business, Mitch, it's exactly the same philosophy that you work on. That is, honour your commitments and give the customer what they want. That's the two. In fact, sometimes give them more than what they want in terms of value. But I think sure, there's all the complications that comes along with it, with finding customers and understanding what their needs are and so forth. But if you have particular offer that you solve a particular problem, in your mind, that's what you're doing. That's what you're solving, is that problem. It's not about all the other bits and pieces that hang around the side of it. So, I couldn't agree with you more. As much as you're a broken record, we could probably just stop here and we'll put the rest of the tape on replay and let it loop. And we'll say the same thing over and over again to the end. What's your approach to branding in industries that people might not see as sexy, like site fencing and environmental compliance?
That's a tough one. It's the difference between products that people want and products that people need. Nobody's ever wanted a temporary fence on their site, or sediment control, or slope stabilization, or whatever. It's a row of Gadian baskets to retain a wall. It's something that they need. Gadians are probably just touching on the edge of it. It might be a cosmetic thing for a garden, but usually 99 out of 100 times, it's something they need, something that's part of the construction scope, and it's just a line item on a schedule of work somewhere. So they need to get it from a number of suppliers that are out there, the usual suspects, and they'll call one, which is usually the one that was in the speed dial from the last time they got it 2 years ago. Be perceived as being the place where you want to get your temporary fence from is not an easy task. It's the same with commercial cleaning. It's something that is needed, but you don't really think too much about it. You don't go Googling, I wonder where I could get my commercial cleaning done today. No, it's just somebody that was hired, or a contract that was issued 12 months ago, and everything's fine. The place is relatively clean. I don't need to look any further. The downside with that is that the complacency that sets in on having a supplier just being on rinse repeat is that you don't actually look any further into it as to what you could be getting better. So with cleaning, for example, the only time you notice you're cleaning is when it's not been done properly. If the cleaners haven't emptied the bin, or you arrive at the office in the morning, you sit down, your desk hasn't been wiped down. Why do cleaners? That's the only time. So the industry itself is only seen in a negative context after the contract has been issued. Paying money for this cleaning to happen, and it didn't happen right. So one of the ways we've done that in cleaning is we've started this 18-point health check that we provide for customers, prospects, anyone who wants. And it's essentially one of our leaders in our cleaning teams will go out and do a quick site visit. It takes about 20 minutes or so. Got an 18-point checklist, and they go through and they have a look at everything that's within your premises. Rooms that look clean, we have a look at it, and the customer actually, or the prospect, gives a grading on where they think it's at based on what we discovered together. And then at the end of it, you get a score, and you get a report card of things that you can fix. And it's a free service that we're offering. We're just giving it away because it's the guys are good at what they do. And ultimately our gain for that at some point may be that they realize that what they're paying for is not quite what they're getting anymore. That's through no fault of anyone's. You hire a cleaner, they come in, they spend a year there, they spend 2 years there, they're on the same contract. They're going to want to slowly, not that they're going to want to, human nature would dictate that the cleaners will tend to drop back to the level that they can get away with without there being a complaint. So as long as they stay above that level, everything's okay. Now, that's not what was in the contract to start with, but we can bring it down to just being at the point where everybody's happy and everything's still happening and we still get our cleaning contract money. That's a little bit of dirty background industry talk on the cleaning industry, and I probably shouldn't be putting it out there like that, but just being honest, that's human nature. It's how it happens. So one way of marketing, and that's what we're doing with our free service.
It's really interesting. As you was talking, I found most of our clients sit in that B2B tech space. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, they're unhappy at that point in time. That's the 3% of buyers of the total available market. That's the 3% of buyers that are in the window.
Correct.
Ready to buy. of course, you want to attract those people through your branding, but that's not the real purpose of the branding. The real purpose of branding is making sure that the other 97% know about you, so that when they get to that level of 3% ready to buy, that they're coming for you. But I would think, and as you were beginning to talk, I was almost going to ask you the next question. So do you believe that branding is not as important? And I just wonder if, unless you're very, very specific in an industry with your service, it would be almost impossible to brand yourself to be, the total commercial cleaners for every industry across the country type thing. Is there a particular niche that you focus in terms of businesses?
Well, it's my role at Advanced as CMO, as you know, because there's 5 different companies within the group. I'm continuously switching.
No, sorry, I meant as far as
commercial cleaning.
Well, you gave that example about commercial cleaning. Yeah, is there a particular niche across your potential clients that you focus on? How do you determine commercial for
Commercial cleaning for us is, we do a lot of childcare centres around Australia. We service Queensland, throughout Queensland. We service larger organisations, a lot of councils, council buildings, council facilities. We don't do house cleans. We don't do domestic cleaning. So it's firmly in the commercial cleaning space. And those commercial cleaning clients are generally larger organizations where we'll start cleaning one and they realize the difference that it can make. And then we tend to end up with others from the same group. So we expand geographically. So advanced cleaning is across Australia.
That's all across Australia, and it's almost, it's the multi-site cleaning specialist. It sounds like to me that the organizations with sites and locations. Very good. Very good. It's interesting. Well, while you're thinking about that, the whole objective here for us, quite transparently, is to be able to, dig in and find those insights that our audience will be able to pick up and potentially run with themselves in terms of marketing, website conversion, lead generation, deal management, and closing deals. I think there's an underlying, while you're thinking about it, I think there's an underlying psychology that shores all of these facets that work almost everywhere, because regardless of whether you're a direct-to-consumer or consumer or B2C customer, business to customer versus a business to business, where you're dealing mainly with businesses, the underlying aspect to all of that is that you're dealing with human beings, as you said right to the show from the beginning. It's people to people. And so that's why I think, often when people tend to stay in their own lane when they're in an industry or in their own industry, they believe that's where their skill set is. It's not until you actually switch industries, and we're lucky enough to see across a whole range of industries, and we see what's happening in one industry. For instance, the biggest variation that I see across our customer base is the difference between direct-to-customer or e-commerce type businesses where they're working to a checkout versus business-to-businesses that have a reasonably length of time in their sales cycle.
Yep.
I honestly believe that the business-to-business approach is somewhat broken and extraordinarily slow-moving compared to e-commerce. And I think it's driven because the poor marketers in B2B don't see the outcomes for such a long time. When you're direct-to-customer, you do something today, you see their checkouts tomorrow, you see their cash in the bank, you see the immediate results, whereas when you're in B2B, but I think the learnings you can take from that are the same things that influence direct-to-customer will influence the B2B market, because it's an underlying human psychology aspect that is the fundamental approach.
I can sum all that up for you. I'm in both e-commerce through the MAVENs and in B2B. B2B's far more for me, but the key to growth, which I believe was your previous question, the key to growth is in fact retention. So what I mean by that is if you have customers coming in the door, or by your sales funnel or by your lead mechanism, you have new customers coming on board. If you picture that on a graph, on an X and Y axis graph, the customers that are coming in the door is a line going up. The customers that you, for whatever reason, can't service or don't service well, or they get disgruntled or don't get a resolution to an issue that's come up and they leave, that's another line going up underneath that graph. So the band in between is your level of customers, is your volume of customers that you currently have. So the wedge that's underneath that of the customers that have left, that you don't have anymore, actually where the hidden growth lies. So if you can imagine, just in a perfect scenario, that with every new customer that you win, you never lose a customer, over time, your business will get wider and bigger, because you're not losing any. But the reality is that we're losing them at the bottom. So we end up with this continuing band of customers who haven't been churned. So growth, I think, is retention.
Got it. I agree. It makes a whole lot of sense. And it'll be a multiplier for the impact of your new customer acquisition. So whatever your sales and marketing efforts are, if you have that retention foundation underneath it, it's actually a magnet of your new customer acquisition. Yeah.
Great question.
I would like to switch a little bit now. You've mentioned the MAVEN method a couple of times. What is the MAVEN method in simple terms? Can you walk us through that?
It's actually a product of what I call my legacy, my significance project, what I want to leave behind on this earth after I've gone. And it's an organization called Shifting Forward that I've founded. And Shifting Forward is for anyone on earth who's got something that they want to improve upon, that they want to get better at, that they want to stop doing or they want to start doing. Might be career, might be relationships, it might be business. You might be in business or you might be an employee and you want to get into business and you're good at what you do, but you've got no idea how to get into business. So I work with experts from around the world who provide content for me on helping people shift from point A to point B. The Shifting Forward philosophy is really based around the mindset people have. Because I believe everybody is a creative being. We have the means to be able to move forward in our lives if we just know the right way to do it. And the key, number one for that is mindset. Is the way you see yourself, is the way you think about yourself and the way you see the world around you, your inner world and your outer world. So I started dabbling in frequencies. There's some frequencies that resonate with the human race, 432s and 888s and things like that. They're music and frequencies that tend to make things happen within your mind if you're open to them. The spoken word mixed with that, I found became quite powerful. So I've recorded frequency-based music and then I've recorded spoken word or even sung word over the top of that to address issues for people. And that's kind of how the MAVEN method started. So a MAVEN, do you know what a MAVEN is, Terry?
For the audience, please, let's explain it.
A MAVEN is essentially a sage, a wise person. That's what the word MAVEN is. I, however, use it as an acronym, and MAVEN stands for meditation, affirmation, visualization. So those are the first three core elements. And then the last two are E, education, and N, navigation. So learning what you need to learn to shift from one place to another, and then navigating, finding the roadmap of how to do that. So summarizing all of those together, the MAVEN method works around having these recordings, which are multi-level recordings. So I record them on my home system here. It's the music that's underneath it is designed to open the thinking. There's almost a meditation-based spoken word over the top of it. There's subliminal messaging underneath it, which comes from hypnotherapy methodologies. And that then gets set into a course, which is a short 30-minute to 1.5 hour long session of a recording and then a small exercise. And this is where AI comes in. Some of them there's long prompts that are written in there and you copy and paste those into your LLM, your ChatGPT or whatever you use, and then follow the prompts from there, follow the questions. It asks you things, you respond to that. It formulates its answer for the next question based on what you've answered. It gets to know you, and it then gives you guidance as to how to get across onto the other side. And then there's a conclusion piece that comes after that, which is usually also a video recording of myself. And these little elements are designed to be bite-sized pieces of knowledge that people can use to help themselves shift forward in their life. And if I'm speaking on stage, I often refer to the scene in the movie The Matrix, where I cast your mind back, where Trinity's standing on the roof and Neo's there, and the only escape they have is that helicopter. And he says to her, "Do you know how to fly that?" And she says, "No, but I will in a second." And she gets on to Dozer, who's back in the office, and he sends through the program, uploads it into her mind, and then they jump in the chopper and fly away. Now, very simplified version, but that's what I'm aiming to build my MAVENs toward, is being little pieces of information that you can insert into your mind to know the next step.
I've got another couple of questions, obviously, that come out of that, I can tell you now. But one question that has jumped into my mind as you were talking, what do you say to skeptics? What do you say to people that go, this just sounds like hokey pokey to me? It's all smoke and mirrors. What do you say to them?
I say to them, without having a listen to one, without going through the exercise and engaging your own mind in it, you're never going to know. It might be just hocus pocus. Until you have a go, you don't know. And for some people, from the people who have used these MAVENs, we've had results from just general, that was very relaxing. That made me feel good. It's given me what I needed to finally get there. There's been no negative from it. I've had no negative feedback to say that it's just garbage. Just hearing me speak about it like this and understand the words that I'm saying, I can't put it into words why it works. I think it's just a combination of all of the things, of the frequencies, the words, the messaging, and using the own person's thinking to build their thinking forward. The combination of all of that together is what makes it so powerful, I think.
From what you know, how does mindset work apply to sales and marketing or leadership? So the work that you're doing with mindset, how does that apply to sales?
I think it dovetails in beautifully to it, because a lot of what sales is, let's just focus on sales for the moment. We'll put marketing aside just for now. Sales is, as you said before, is people to people. And if I can speak to you as a person and I'm confident in what I'm providing and the solution I'm offering is exactly the solution you need to solve the problem that you've got, then I'm going to be far more convincing in a sales position. In fact, I then almost switch around to your side of the table and I become an assistant buyer rather than a salesperson trying to sell you something. Nobody likes to be sold. If you can be empathetic, honest, and you work with the client to solve the issue that they have, then that's sales in a nutshell. They get what they need, their problem gets solved, and you've achieved your outcome.
So what's a story of someone you've seen shift forward in a way that surprised even you?
I think the best one was a lady. She would have been mid-40s. She was a mum. She had the kids running around. She was just in a world of pain doing the mum thing day in, day out. Hubby was going off to work. She had the house by herself. She was doing the housework. She was doing odd jobs around the place. She was just down. She was just generally unhappy. And she used one of the specific MAVENs that I've got, which I'll share a link with you. It allowed her to take a helicopter view of her life, of the fortunate position she was in when compared to other mums around the world, particularly in places that we're all seeing in the news at the moment, in Israel and Gaza and America even. There's some people doing it really tough out there. And that comparison and the life that she saw that she had, that she didn't see until her eyes got open to it, was actually a beautiful life indeed. And that transformation, when she spoke to me afterwards, she had tears in her eyes and she said, I can see it. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. And that goosebumps now thinking about it. That kind of result, that kind of genuine, deep human achievement that she found, that she faced. That's just the legacy project that I spoke about before, my significance on this leave. That's to shift forward in their lives and in their situation, whatever that situation is.
So it's shifting back to, well, not shifting back because it's all totally relevant, but more on the specific sales and marketing side of things. What mistakes do you see marketers make when they're selling traditional or industrial sectors? I mean, that's an environment that you've operated in predominantly, and now you've sort of got more of your direct to customer, and I'm sure there's a digital aspect to that. Well, I know there's a digital aspect to that as well. But what's the biggest mistake you see marketers make in selling in traditional or industrial sectors?
I think taking their eye off the ball. I'm not going to say broken record again, but focusing too much on the numbers and the metrics and the what moves the needle and what pulls the lever and why isn't this working and that should be working. And digital technology, it's wonderful and it's definitely a part of the marketing mix and it needs to be. But be real, be a person, be a genuine human being who's helping another human being overcome a problem or an issue they have, or giving them what they want, whatever business you might be in.
And be available.
Integrity. Just do what you say you're going to do. Show up on time. Provide good service at a fair rate price. That's all people are looking for. And the blinders that tend to come on for marketing these days, I think, is there is so much technology available that the trap is to use more than you actually need. Find what works for your particular customer demographic, or what works for you, and lean into that and do that to the best of your ability and show integrity and be honest. That's the circle right there.
It's really interesting in almost, I'm going to say almost because my memory's not good enough to say if it's 100% or not, but in almost every single inbound funnel audit or review that I've done, the winner has been the one that has the shortest path to get to a person-to-person conversation. I've seen some funnels that are extraordinarily sophisticated in terms of the steps and the call to actions, and you fill in a form and you quickly get a text message saying someone will be back in touch and thanks and here's some more information, and then you get an email that does. It's almost like textbook marketing funnel nurture process. Textbook. It's what everyone would say to do. But every time you compare it to the competitor that's winning, They've got so many
Yeah.
less steps involved in actually getting to talk to a person where there can be a two-way conversation about solving the particular problem they've got. And, I keep saying solving problem. Many times, the problem is a lack of knowledge about understanding a particular feature or function of your product that you're offering to that person. They've got a bigger problem that they're trying to solve. They're trying to find a provider. But the problem they've got at this 30 seconds that they're reaching out to you is they need an answer to this question. And the longer it takes to get that answer, the less likely you are to get the deal. So, I'm laughing now. We're both sounding like broken records, but it's just the reality.
And look, that's a very, very easy thing to do. All of my sales teams in Advanced and in SiteSmART and in MitchBruger.com for that matter, everything is about getting back to the customer quick. A web form comes in and we have a 30-minute window by which a phone call happens. And more often than not, our sales teams in each of the divisions will pick up the phone straight away. If there's a phone number on the web form that comes in, our customer has a phone call. Imagine you've got an issue and you've put a web, and before you can close the screen, phone rings and it's the guy you've just sent a message to and he's addressing the issue you just talked about within 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. That's the goal, right?
That is the goal. That is the goal.
Or indeed have a live chat on the website. You don't even put a web form in. You just start a conversation with a person.
Thank you. Thank you. I said that. Thank you.
You offer fantastic service, Terry. This is the stuff. This is the gold right here that people are missing. They get too complicated.
Do you find it's something that we see often? I deal with a reasonable amount of industrial business, but I don't see this happen so much. Do you see a gap or silo between sales and marketing in your business, or even in your competitors, in your customers, where they're more industrial, commercial type businesses, more traditional type businesses? Do you see a lack of alignment between marketing and sales?
It's everywhere. It's a battle I continuously try and fight.
Oh, you do yourself even in your business?
In each of the businesses. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So how do you get sales and marketing aligned then? Because your service, as simple as it is, there's some complexity involved as well, because it's from the marketing side to get inquiries. Then you've got a whole number of physical steps. It's a little bit different to, when I joke around often and say, look, I love talking to people like you, Mitch, and our clients that are industrial, that sell real hard physical products that you've actually got to, make in a factory and put on a truck and deliver to a customer, because the digital world is so far different and removed from that. There is a level of complexity in the service delivery. And I'm not saying for one second there's not from a digital perspective, but I think it sometimes gets downplayed in industrial sectors where it's just you put it on a truck and deliver it and the job's done. But how do you get alignment between sales and marketing in that environment?
Sit in the same room, take time, sit down in the boardroom, have a conversation, throw the stuff on the table, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the ugly stuff. And the third element in that, Terry, is operations. So the marketing to the sales to the operations, everybody needs to be in alignment. And the only way you're going to do that is by getting everyone together and having people understand the challenges of the other sections, the other divisions. I think years ago, it was Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar or someone like that. He had a story that he recounted of a large automotive organization over in the States. And once a year, they take the head of sales and the head of operations and they swap roles for a week. So each of these leaders in their field sit in a completely uncomfortable situation that they're not used to. And operations deals with what the sales guys are doing and the sales challenges and the sales things that are being focused out in the field. And the sales guy is now in the operations office dealing with all the stuff and the promises that the sales guys have made. And for them both to get that alternative vision, they're more than happy to get back to their roles again at the end of the week, obviously, as you might imagine. But in doing so, they've got a clearer understanding of the challenges that each face. And I think that's really important, particularly in smaller organizations where you've got a 1 or 2 person team on each side and people have personalities. They need to work together.
You've really touched on some goals here. Work together is the mechanics, I guess. The output or outcome is, and that a lot of people don't realize, is that every place where there is a customer interaction with your business, whether that's looking at a billboard that marketing has put together or a sign on the side of the development site, or whether it's an interaction with a salesperson, or whether it's an interaction with someone in an operational capacity, whether it's a delivery driver, whether it's somebody doing some cleaning, every single touch point is a full representation of your brand and your business. And that experience of every single one of those touch points goes a massive way. And I would say even more so for those individuals that there's personal interaction in sales and operations, has much more of an impact on brand and the overall perception of that business than even marketing does. Marketing's like the billboard that says, hey, look at me, come and see us. And they go, okay, well, that looks interesting to me. I'll come and help. It might help me solve my problem. It's when you have the actual interactions where all of the magic happens. It's something that I've impressed on every single business I've been in, I think since my mid-20s. Every business that I've run, I remember I had one guy, I was a new senior manager in the business, and a gentleman who was a bit older than me and was a peer, but I was promoted above him. We were in an environment which was a combination of direct to customer and business to business. And so we had sort of the business to business aspect, which was done over the phones at that stage, phone and fax. And then we had a counter in that same office where the two departments were really only separated by where they sat in the office as opposed to, like different offices. So everyone was visible. And at points in time, the business to business team had to get up and it's a steel yard we're in. So we're going out looking at particular pieces of steel, etc. And this guy always looked disheveled, shined his shoes, quite frankly. And like everyone else in the business took pride in their presentation. The difficulty in having that conversation with him for me was a learning very early in my career, but the importance was ingrained in such an early stage in my career as well, because I approached the conversation with a lot of empathy, but also with a lot of determination that I really wanted to get the outcome that he stepped up like everybody else was. He was seen who'd been in the business for a long time and felt that, his reputation would carry him. When he made the change to his appearance, there were two fascinating things happened. His own persona changed in that he presented much more confidently than what he was before. The way that the rest of the team perceived him and the way they treated and interacted with him was much more in standing of his reputation and long standing in the business. I didn't realize it would have such a big effect, but it was almost it gone from being, one of just the little mates and we're all sort of in this together to all of a sudden he was recognized as a senior of the team and one of the leaders in the team, and people started changing their interactions from, joking around with him to actually going to him for advice and seeing him as one of the leaders there. And he came to me, it took about 6 months. He didn't like our conversations. And in fact, we had to have a number of conversations that actually got to the point where I said, I don't care about your reputation unless you get in line with the way everybody else presents themselves here. I can't have you bringing that standard down for the rest of the team. You've got two choices to make. We actually had to get to that conversation where this could affect your employment with us. And so very begrudgingly made the change. It took him 6 months to come and say, thank you. It was, it's one of the best things that's ever happened while I've been in this job, that I'm really enjoying my new place in the team now. So I think that understanding that every single person in the team, and aside from that, he was always good in terms of his sales results, but they lifted to a new level as well. The results that his business side of the business was delivering just really like a doubled. It was a shocking difference. And it was all because of his persona and the way he was perceived by the rest of the team. And even when an inbound phone call came through, the way they would hand the call through and interact with that particular business customer when they were handing it over, just the professionalism, everything lifted. And so that experience of every touch point, I just can't impress upon it. You read about it in books, you get taught about it at school or uni, any type of training that you do, they'll say the same kind of thing. But I don't think people truly, truly understand how important and how much of an impact. Mitch, I get it. Obviously you do, and I know that leaders that go and spend time in the coalface do. I think that's probably, in my mind, if you don't spend time in the coalface, I don't think you can understand the true impact of it. But, the uniforms, clean trucks, polite, smiling staff, even when they're busy and it's, a 38-degree day and they're dragging something heavy around and sweat's pouring off them everywhere, it's not a disgruntled interaction. It's, oh, hi, how you going? It's always they're rep your band. So I know that was a bit of a long diatribe, but that I don't think it can't be underplayed.
No, not
it's
at
so
all.
critical.
And in fact, the entire story you just told of that gentleman, that could almost be a testimonial on a shifting forward page, because that's exactly what he did. He shifted forward in his life. And the key driver behind that was his mindset. And his mindset changed when he got the ultimatum
Absolutely.
that, look, you need to lift your game here or you're out. Okay, so he shifted his mindset, changed his appearance. That changed his mindset even more. Then he became more approachable. Then he became authoritative by being the senior person that he was. And all of that shifted based on the initial mindset shift that he had after the conversation with you. You've essentially done what I do with Shifting Forward with the MAVEN. That's a poster child recount there.
It's interesting. Thank you. I carry that with me every day, and I use those eyes to view every interaction I have. Particularly when I'm doing the inbound funnel audits, if you can imagine how I feel, knowing that story that I've just told you, how I feel when I see step after step after step, and then it's message, I'll get back to you, it's 24 hours. There's vagueness. I mean, the last one I did was talking about, we'll get back to you within 24 hours. Now, I just had one question. I wanted to do a proposal this afternoon. There was the persona that I'd built for this particular inquiry. I had to do a proposal this afternoon. I had one question that I needed answered. It was a very simple question. And yet, I'm getting all this vagueness on one side. The other side was actually had a mobile phone number and dialed the number, and person was on the other side, answered the call, and it was a very positive educational experience. And so that's the mindset that I go forward with now in all of these inbound funnel reviews.
That's perfect.
It's so blatantly obvious when you see a person when you see an organization that has a touch point where you go, gee, as soon as you feel that, you go, I think about, these businesses are big businesses. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing. They've got, massive amount of traffic coming in. Well, it varies. I mean, we do some clients that are just starting off and they've got 1,000, 2,000 visitors a month to their website. When I see that little twinge, I know that when I feel, I just imagine what are the 1,000 visitors that are coming to this website? What are the other 300,000 visitors that are coming to this website that they've paid to get to this website?
Yeah.
What are
and
they
they're probably
thinking?
having that same twinge.
It's really interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the tales of four poets. Why Phil Collins, Sting, James Taylor, and Billy Joel?
Because they're poets. They're lyricists. They write from reality. They write from their lives. They write from the stuff that happens in people's lives. And people connect to that. It's an authenticity thing. It's based around the same thing that would real people making music. They're not a music persona. When you think of some bands and performers out there, they put on a persona and they're a different person in their private life. Those four gentlemen, in my thinking, have written some of the most beautiful music the world's ever seen. And it's from the heart. They're writing about things that have happened. So Tales of Four Poets, just for a bit of background for your listeners, is a show that I've put together. It's a one-person show. And I perform the music of those four gentlemen, Sting, Phil Collins, James Taylor, and Billy Joel. And there's a storyline that weaves through it, and it's background. There's pieces of interviews with those artists about the songs, about what was happening in their lives when those songs were written, what those songs mean. We often, as listeners to songs, we get an idea in our head of what a lyric means, or what it means in our life. And then when you hear the real story why the song was written, it's something completely different. But that's the beauty of a good songwriter, is to be able to write lyrics and write content that resonates with people within their own context. So the songs that we hear, that we love, we heard them the first time back in 1997 when we were hanging around with that guy, and those two girls used to come and visit, and we'd go and jump in the ute and we'd drive down to the lake and light a fire and, drink beers till 2:00 in the morning. And that was that time of my life, and that song connects me to that. So there's a real power in the music that resonates with us. And I think those four gentlemen have written, for me, it's essentially the timeline, the framework of my life revolves around songs from those four gentlemen. So that's why I wanted to pay tribute and put that show together.
How often do you perform?
Not a lot, actually. I put it together. I've done a series of shows, and more for my own benefit, to tweak it and to finalize it, and had friends and musicians and other people come and watch the show and then give me feedback afterwards. I've taken a whole bunch of notes. Subsequently, I've rewritten parts of the show just to bring it more in line. The question of the viewers was, what worked, what didn't work? Did I lose you there somewhere? Were there some things that were too cryptic? Did I go off on a tangent? I'd spent 4 years writing this show, so I needed other people's input to get closer to aligning it with an audience that has no idea about this, never seen it before. So I've more work into it, and it's essentially a retirement project for me. When I sell the businesses, when I decide to, get on a caravan with my wife and do some traveling around Australia, it's a portable show that I can take with me, and I can play in the Inaminka RSL or wherever along the way to share with regional people this kind of music, that because they don't get shows like that out there. They'll get a Bon Jovi tribute band that comes to the bigger part of town and, rocks the pub that night and all the young fellas enjoy it. But this is more genuine, real human music for people in caravan parks and the grey nomads of the world.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. I think there's a common theme that runs through those particular artists in that, as you've described, there's a connection or a memory that's attached to it. I think if in the moment that you're hearing those songs, often for the very first time, you haven't yet made those memories, but there is a movie that plays in your mind as you're hearing the lyrics and as you're hearing and going through the story, and it becomes yours. It becomes yours. They're telling their story, but the reality is you bring it into your reality and it becomes yours. What do you think, what role do you think creativity has in your business life?
I think creativity is an integral part of who I am. I've been a performer and entertainer, and bringing that into the day job, I think firstly, it creates more engaging conversations because there's always a tangent you can go down. You'll notice, you'll pick up on something when you're speaking with a customer about music or musicality or stage performance. And it's a line of conversation that if you can have conversations that are separate from the business line you're talking about, it builds rapport. That sounds very clinical, but it actually connects you more to your customer. And there's an inherent trust that comes with that. People seem to resonate well with storytellers and musicians. And I think being a storyteller is a big part of marketing.
I think it's a big part of leadership and sales as well. I think it's a big part of being a human, quite frankly. We're sort of hardwired to tune into stuff. Mitch, look, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you. I appreciate your time today, and really appreciate you coming on the chat.
Thanks very much, Tashad. I've enjoyed it too.
Thank you.